Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us. I am on tech, so just to apologise in advance if anything goes wrong. People come in and I have to let them in. So if I momentarily look distracted, that's why. My name's Catherine Day-Forge. I'm the director of the Independent Cinema Office. This is Simon Ward, who is one of our trustees. Thanks very much for joining us today. We are recording this just for people who can't make this Zoom at this particular time, just so you know that. And if you are shy, obviously there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions after I've been speaking, but if you want to post things in the chat to ask, or if things occur to you as I go along, then please do put them there. The whole point of this session is that that we are trying to tell you about the organisation and tell you a bit more information about being a trustee. So we would like you to get the most out of this session as possible. So there are no questions that are stupid. There are no stupid questions. There are no things that you should know. So feel free to ask anything. So I set up the Independent Cinema Office 22 years ago. I think 22 years ago. I'm trying to remember now. Or maybe it was, anyway, 21 years ago. Maybe it was 21 years ago. And it is, the Independent Cinema Office is the national organisation in the UK for cinema exhibition. So that includes everything: film festivals, cinemas, pop-ups, collectives, lots and lots of basically everything that involves people watching films in a communal setting. And so we very much are about a communal cinema experience. We also run Film Hub Southeast. So the way that the ICO is a registered charity and a company limited by guarantee, and about 75 to 80% of our funding every year is public funding, and then we earn the rest. So one of the ways in which film is organised, or public funding for film is organised in the UK, is through funding from the British Film Institute, and the UK is divided up into regional film bodies, and we run the one for the southeast of England. So through that, we provide smaller grants to small organisations, small cinemas, film festivals, and we also fund short filmmaking, or what we might call talent, so people to make short films who come from the southeast of England. We have a network of about 23 cinemas and one film festival. They're all across the UK, and we program and book their films for them. We also distribute films, so we might distribute cultural touring programs, archive films, non-fiction films, things that perhaps the commercial industry wouldn't do because they would not perceive that they were commercial enough, but we think that there are audiences for them. We do consultancy, so we work with local authorities and independent charities, sometimes with schools, sometimes with local communities, to build cinemas where they live and give them advice about how to do that. We are the single biggest provider of training programs for the independent film sector, exhibition sector in the UK. So we do everything from international training for film festivals to courses on business skills, marketing, audience development. And we run national events. So the biggest national events that we do are called screening days. We have a screening days program, and this is where exhibitors come to watch films before they're released. And we think that by bringing people together and showing them films before they come out, giving them access to the widest range of cinema, we encourage people to be ambitious in their programming choices for what people in their communities and what they get to see. So we do quite a lot of different things, but it's all about it all kind of stems from the belief that cinema, like all art forms, has the power to change people's lives, and that we believe very much in equity. So we would like people wherever they live to have access to the best of world cinema. We also, I guess, like to bring things to people that they might not be familiar with, that they might not know, and that we think that they might like. So we do quite a lot of different things. We also we have a whole kind of online training portfolio where people can sign up for courses and learn more about some of the things that might be involved in running a cinema, or working in a cinema, or becoming a programmer. And we have a big advice and information part on our website where people can download guides, and they're on everything to starting your own cinema, to audience development, to marketing, to programming. So there's a really wide range of activities. We have about 20 employees. We are based in an office in London, near London Bridge, but we work across the UK and internationally. We're based in London really because that's where the majority of distributors are based. And so when people go and watch films, it's quite hard to do that and to program films unless you can access them. We currently have around, I always forget, we have about 10 or 11 trustees. The reason we're advertising now is because trustees generally sign up for kind of 3 years. Sometimes they sign up for 1 year, particularly if they're younger, but generally 3 years, and then their term can be renewed. And we have 3 trustees, including Simon, who's here today, who are going to step down next year because they'll have been here for 9 years. So trustees usually join. They often are there for different reasons. They all bring different skills to the board. So there is no particular, one kind of person that we're seeking to be trustees. They often bring their own skills and their own perspectives and their own life experience. But because we're very much an audience-facing organisation, very much interested in audiences and the equity of audiences, we kind of would like to reflect the audiences that we serve. So Simon, that's like too much of me talking probably, and you listening to me. I just wondered if I could bring you in here and if you could talk to people about your experience of being a trustee for the ICO.
Sure. So, as Catherine said, I've been almost 9 years. I've been a trustee now, so I'm coming to the end of my permitted terms. Prior to that, I worked with Catherine from the beginning at the ICO for a long time, many years, and before that, I was a film programmer at places like the ICA in London, the London Korean Film Festival, lots of places. So my kind of background is very much in independent film and world cinema, which is, the majority of the people on the board don't have that film background. And actually, the film background is something that the ICO has internally anyway in its staff, people like Catherine and the team of programmers. So many of the trustees, as Catherine alluded to, might have a background in something like finance or law or some other area. One of the things is when you start as a trustee, you don't actually have to know that much. The first kind of couple of board meetings are usually about absorbing the breadth of what the ICO does, and it does many things. And what I think you get out of it, certainly what I've got out of it, is really understanding the kind of cultural landscape, the charity landscape, learning how businesses work, because although it's a charity, the ICO is run as a very successful business. And so you learn about things like finance and all of that, but you also have a sort of a role in something called governance, which is where you're kind of overseeing that everything is above board within the organization. The ICO is extremely transparent and ethical, so that's never been an issue at all. But that's kind of one of the legal requirements of being a board member, is that you provide an oversight on all the sort of the ways funds are transferred and how money is spent, but also things like the staff, helping look after the staff of the ICO. So, for example, if there are any disputes internally that might come to the board, again, something that is extraordinarily rare, but it also might come around when we're looking at things like Catherine might want to be looking at the resources of the ICO with a view to giving, say, a pay rise to the staff, an incremental annual pay rise. And that's something that always has to go through the board to make sure that the company is able to afford it and that it's a reasonable amount. So it's those kind of, I'd say the fundamental thing you're doing is you are helping an organization like the ICO bring film culture to the nation. So that's the really exciting thing. You're really helping one of the kind of cutting edge companies, charitable institutions, cultural outfits, which is seeking to really broaden access to not only the kinds of films that are seen in this country, but also the kinds of audiences that get to see them. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy to answer any questions from anyone as well about my experience in it. But that's kind of it in a nutshell. it's very collegiate, I should say. Everyone is very friendly, and you know, as Catherine said in the beginning, I think one of the things when you start is you think, oh, I don't know anything about this legal situation, or I don't know anything about the finance stuff, and it's absolutely fine to ask questions. We all ask each other questions. We've all got different areas of knowledge, and we're very used to saying, "Oh, I don't really understand that. Can you explain it?" And that's actually part of your role, is to interrogate things you don't understand, because if you don't understand them, then you can't say, yes, that's all fine. So you're encouraged to ask questions.
Yeah, so we have 4 meetings a year. They're usually on Zoom. We do sometimes meet in real life, but more often than not these days after COVID, we have our meetings on Zoom, which is quite good because we have quite a few trustees who live in different parts of the country, so they can all participate. And obviously, as I said at the beginning, we have cinemas and we do lots of different work in different parts of the UK. So for us, it's quite good to have trustees and to be able to do those meetings on Zoom. We do also have some additional committees. So we have a finance committee, we have an HR and personnel committee, we have an EDI committee. The only one of those that kind of really meets regularly is the finance committee, and that usually meets 2 weeks before each board meeting. The other committees are much more ad hoc and meet kind of as and when they are needed. When we have a particular, sometimes we form a committee when we're looking at a particular sort of area. So for example, the office that we are in at the moment is an office that we bought. Well, obviously it doesn't belong to us yet, belongs to the bank still, but we bought it about 5 years ago. And as you can imagine, doing that, sort of spending that amount of money, getting that kind of loan was a really, really big an ambitious project for us. So we had a special committee of the subcommittee of the board that looked at that and interrogated all of the decisions that we were making and advised us, or could have stopped that process any time if they thought that was a mad idea. So I would say the commitment is the meetings are usually about an hour and a half long, an hour and 15 minutes long. The board meetings, we try and make them not too long. We try and plan them so that they are within people's schedules so that they can make them. So they are 4 times a year, and there are opportunities to join other committees, but there are some board members who are not in any committee. We also invite board members to a lot of our events, so they usually get invited to screening days, which quite a lot of them like coming to. And then we also invite them to other things that we do. And that's an opportunity to meet some of the people that we work with, and also to find out. Board members also sometimes come and talk on our training courses, or we might ask them to talk to us about particular things. So there is as much as you are able to, there are sort of opportunities to contribute, but I would say it's not like hugely onerous. What do you think, Simon, in terms of time commitment?
Yeah, I mean, if you're on the board 4 times a year, you're probably looking at 90 minutes approximately for each of those meetings. So it's not particularly onerous. There's a bit of background reading before the meeting, where you'll be sent, for example, budgets and things to have a quick look at, or an overview of all the things that the ICO is doing. But I don't think it's too onerous. I mean, I'm on, I think, 2 other committees as well. And I forgot to mention the reason I left the ICO was to set up, was to open my own independent cinema with my wife. So we run a full-time cinema as well, and we can manage to do that and various other projects and still happily give lots of time to the board.
So just to let you know about the process and the onboarding process. So when people join the board, they have an opportunity to talk to our head of finance to go through our kind of financial accounts. We usually pay for them to undertake the NCVO's refresher or introduction to being a trustee course. That's a kind of a 1-day, half-day course. We also give them a board buddy. So we give them someone who is already on the board who they can talk to before their first meetings, or if, that can kind of have a more in-depth conversation with them about their experience so that people become confident about participating. And they also get a staff member who is also their kind of staff buddy, if you like, so that they have somebody within the organisation. So at the board meeting, I would normally be at the board meetings, as would our head of finance, but other members of staff only usually come when they're kind of presenting about a particular project. So we usually give new board members a member of staff as a staff body, and that person might be a more junior member of staff, so that they have a different person to speak to within the organisation and get a different perspective. So we try, as Simon said, to be as open and transparent as possible, so that people can find out and experience, you know, all aspects of the organisation. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I should say. Is there anything else I should say or we should talk about before we take questions?
The only other thing I just thought I should mention perhaps is that most of the work you're doing on the board is to support Catharine and her team. So if I was talking about governance and, you know, keeping an eye on things, yes, you do that, but actually you're really there to help the organisation flourish as best you can and bring your expertise and support Catharine and her team.
Yeah, so I would say if you sometimes people apply and I think that they would like to work in the organization. So it's very the relationship between being a trustee and being an employee is, you know, it's very different. So obviously there are people there who are paid to deliver the work, to deliver the activities of the organization, and the board is really there to support and to keep check and make sure, you know, that we are legally compliant, that the work that we're doing is you know, in line with our kind of mission and objectives, and to kind of think about the horizon and what's in the future, and kind of think about succession planning, think about where the organization is going, really sort of embed and think about the next 5 years and the next 10 years. And are we aware of all of the things on the horizon? And, you know, are we compliant with all of the areas? Some of the things that Simon mentioned, which are not always necessarily about the immediate work that we're delivering, but they might be about, you know, the kind of, you know, health and well-being of our employees. They might be about the kind of building. They may be, you know, they might kind of be about overseeing our risk register and thinking about, you know, are we future-proofing against everything from, you know, kind of cybercrime to, you know, all of the making sure that we're aware of government legislation about employment. You know, there's like lots and lots of different things. And as some of you on this call will be aware, you know, it's usually always a challenging time to be in the arts. Everybody will always say. I'm not sure, like I have been working for, you know, over 30 years, and I don't think there was ever a time when it wasn't challenging, actually. But particularly at the moment, I feel it is a challenging time to work in any arts organisation, and it isn't always easy. But obviously, you know, you do have the power to kind of introduce people to things that will change how they think. So it is also amazing too. Do
One
we
of
have
the
any?
opportunities, I would say, just to add to that, is that, you know, one of the things you can do as a board member is advocate for the work that the ICO does, make it more visible to the networks you might have, which the ICO may not have. Just at that.
Yeah, we're very interested in obviously we know most people within our sector, and then across a wider industry, we're also, you know, have lots and lots of relationships with all those people. We're often quite interested in relationships outside of that, because those are things that we don't have, and partnerships that we don't have. So, and also experiences we don't have. So that's why we are interested in a really kind of diverse group of trustees. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to, oh, hang on. Yes, I'll start reading them if we've got some. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Any particular experience or background you would like to see part of the board? So this time on the board, we don't always ask for particular skills, because I think it's sometimes really frustrating when you look at board ads and they're asking for particular skills and you don't have them, because then you don't apply, and then that board's missed out on the skills you do have, if you see what I mean. But this time we are particularly interested in people with financial, HR and fundraising experience. And that's because some of the people that are stepping down have that particular experience. So that's what we're losing. So the chair of our finance committee, for example, who is a practicing accountant and auditor, stepping down. So that's why we're interested in those. But I would say if you don't have any of those skills, you shouldn't not apply. Those are the skills we're particularly interested in the current time, but we're actually interested in hearing from anybody who is interested in joining us. What would a typical board meeting agenda look like? Are there any key issues that crop up time and time again? So we usually have a standing agenda for the board meetings. There are some sort of legal requirements. We look at payments, we go through the minutes and check that they are an accurate record. We usually have the board are kind of looking at the management accounts for that quarter, but bearing in mind that the finance committee would have gone through them with a kind of fine-tooth comb 2 weeks before. So quite often the chair of the finance committee will, make some comments. We might draw attention to people's attention to the sort of current issues around finance, but the finance committee is where we'd go through them really thoroughly. But that's always a standing item. We have, if there are any problems or issues, particularly around funding that we can see on the horizon, we will bring major decisions always come to the board about particular things, whether they are to do with, I'm trying to think, kind of employment practices or projects that we might undertake or anything new. So if I wanted to spend, a substantial amount of money or commit some resources to something, I would usually write a paper, bring it to a board meeting that would be presented. The heads of departments reports are always tabled at the board meeting, and so people ask questions about those. In terms of things coming up time and time again, no, not in terms of a kind of reoccurring. I mean, there are some things that if you run an arts charity they're always in your mind, which are mostly about raising money, and endlessly. That is something that you just have to get used to, fundraising and your relationships with your funders. But otherwise, no, not really.
It was an example, for instance, of a fairly large project that was brought to the board by Catharine and her team, which was around an online international training platform, and that needed quite a lot of sort of seed investment to make it go ahead. So that was one of the things we were looking at. How long would it take to start recouping that money? How did that sit with the cash flow? Was it a good this was sort of off the back of the pandemic and things like that, where there was a lot more kind of online culture blossoming, and so we wanted to be part of that. So that was a kind of project, I think, an example of something that we all looked at quite carefully.
Yeah, and I think Simon alluded to this, but the board would be, if we had any really, we inform staff about, so staff have their own independent channel of communication with board members, so that they could speak to board members if they wanted to. So I think the board is there, in a more general sense. Boards are there to oversee, if there are any difficulties, if there are any problems. I mean, we recently had to take somebody to court because they hadn't paid, a substantial amount of bills to us. So that was a decision we had to bring to the board to get agreement that we would do that. So there was some quite sort of anything, if you like, that may affect the charity or time or resources or its public profile. These are things we would bring to the board. Thank you very much for the extremely helpful information. You are very welcome. I wanted to check, are you seeking a certain number of new board members, or will it depend on the applicants? It usually depends on the applicants. So we don't usually decide in advance, we want this many and this is how many seats we have. Like I said, I think we've got 10 or 11 at the moment. We've got 3 due to, or maybe 4 due to step down. So we're probably looking for more than one, I would say. But there's a point where the board is, I mean, I think our board numbers would always be around 11 or 12. I think more than that, it gets a bit unwieldy and, it's not very helpful. And obviously you don't want to have too few, because then, people have time commitments and it's quite hard to make that work. It becomes not very fair for people who are there. So no, I wouldn't like to put a number on it. It does depend on the applicants very much. Do board members need to be based in the UK? Actually, currently they aren't all based in the UK, but one of the ones who isn't, I think, was based in the UK when they came on the board, and they may obviously feel that they need to step down. So I suppose not necessarily, but I think obviously, and we do work internationally, but 90% of our work is based in the UK. So if you're not based in the UK, it would be interesting to know what you're bringing to the board that we can learn from, or what your contribution is, because obviously quite a lot of the people on the board are based. I mean, we've had people who are based in Northern Ireland, for example, and that's been really, really interesting and helpful. So around the UK is good, but I think if you're outside the UK, it's kind of what you're bringing to us. You know, given that most of our work is within the UK, how that would be helpful. But I would never say to anyone no, because obviously I think you have to be open to the perspectives and other people's skills and experiences. Thanks for the info. Who do we need to address the cover letter to in the application? Oh, that is a very good question. You could address it to the chair of our trustees. She's called Dorothy Wilson. But you should send it to the info address, because that's where all of the applications will go to. So what normally happens, just so you know, so you don't have to write it. You can film yourself. Some people do, and do your application in that way if it would be helpful to you. That all the information is on our website about what format to put it in. And so we get all the applications in, and then myself and usually 2 or 3 board members will shortlist those, and we'll read them all. So they'll all be read. So all your applications will be read by 3 or 4 people, not just me. And then we shortlist, and then we ask some selected candidates for an interview, and that's with a panel of like 3, as I said, like, so it would be some board members and myself. And those usually very informal interviews. They're on Zoom. We don't usually appoint everybody that we interview, but you know, last time I think we appointed 3 people, and we interviewed about 14, something like that, and we had about 50 people apply, just to give you some idea of the numbers. Have we got any more questions? I think that was the last question. I mean, obviously, if you come away from this meeting and you there's a question that you have that you didn't ask, or you think, oh, you know, I really meant to ask that, you know, and I didn't, that's annoying. You are obviously welcome to email us. So on the info email, so that's info@independentcinemaoffice.org.uk, if anything occurs to you subsequently. All the information is on the jobs page of our website, so about how to apply and the timescales. I think the closing date is the 18th of December, so you do have quite a lot of time. Is there anything finally anyone would like to ask? I don't think so, unless you're typing a bit slowly. So thanks very much to everybody for joining us today. Thanks, Simon, to you for coming and participating, and I hope to see some applications from you all. Thanks a lot. Bye.